always on the go, but the day just won't be one without your Hollywood fix. Let Golden State Media Concepts Entertainment Podcast take care of that. An all-inclusive look of pop culture.
Hey guys, welcome to GSMC Entertainment Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Cynthia, and happy Monday, everyone. I hope you guys all had a really safe, fun, relaxing Christmas with your loved ones. I know I did. It was very different this year since we weren't able to all reunite, due to COVID. I come from like a really large family. My mom, she's one of 9, and then my dad's one of 6. Usually we get together with my mom's side, and just that alone is like so many people, and it's always a great time. So it was definitely different this year, not being all together, and then also, the passing of my tia. If you've been tuned in since the last couple of times, I've mentioned that we've been dealing with a passing in my family, and she passed away on December 8th, and then we put her to rest on December 16th. So, it's really hard experiencing that so close to the holidays, especially, when my tia was such an integral part in the holidays. So, definitely different this year, more of like a somber mood, but nonetheless, I still had a fabulous time with my family. It was my parents, my brother, my sister, and then our dog, Louie, and it was really chill. We played loteria. For those of you who don't know, that's Mexican bingo. We had tamales, we had wine, and it was really chill. I'm glad my mom didn't stress out too much this year, like trying to get everyone and do the planning. My mom's usually the one who is contacting her siblings, cousins, like, okay, who's coming, whose house, what is everyone bringing? So my mom's kind of like the organizer. So this year she didn't have that stress. And it was just a good time. And I just want to quickly say as well that, I'm sending lots of love and light to those who are spending the holidays alone. I know it's not easy, when you go online and you see a whole bunch of people with family and parties and just being all together. So just letting you know that you're not alone, sending you lots of love and light during these holiday times, and reach out to somebody if you are feeling, really lonely. And let's just get into it, y'all. Let's get into the entertainment world, the entertainment business. And we are going to start with a movie that everyone's raving about. I had the pleasure of watching this movie on Christmas, and oh my God, it was so heartwarming. It just made my heart smile. And I'm sure you guys know what movie I'm talking about. It's trending on Twitter. It's trending everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. It was just released through Disney Pixar, and that is the movie Soul. And this inventive tale stars Jamie Foxx as a jazz musician caught in a world that human souls pass through on their way into and out of life. And in about 100 jaunty, poignant minutes, Soul, the new Pixar animation feature, tackles some of the questions that many of us have been losing sleep over since childhood, Like, why do I exist? What's the point of being alive? What comes after? We're just constantly questioning our purpose here. And Soul definitely hits a spot in all of us. We can all relate to some degree to the movie. And I think that's why it's so it hits us right where it hurts almost. It's damn, this could be me. I'm experiencing the same feelings as the character in the movie. And it's rare for any movie, let alone an all ages cartoon, to venture into such deep and potentially scary metaphysical territory. But this is hardly the first time the studio has directed its visual and storytelling resources toward mighty philosophical themes. Soul follows Coco in conjuring a detailed vision of the afterlife, and also in this case the before life, and joins Inside Out in turning abstract concepts into funny characters and vivid landscapes. The world that human souls pass through on our way into and out of life is a glowing, minimalist realm of embodied metaphors and galaxy brain jokes, populated by blobby, ectoplasmic souls and squiggly bureaucratic counselors named Jerry. But at the same time, Soul, directed by Pete Docter and Kemp Powers from a screenplay they wrote with Mike Jones, represents a new chapter in Pixar's expansion of realism. Having conquered fish scales in Finding Nemo, beastly fur in Monsters, Inc., and metal in Cars and vermin in Ratatouille, the animators have set themselves more subtle challenges. Though other Pixar projects have visited actual places such as Paris, San Francisco, the Great Barrier Reef, this is the first to dive fully into the multi-sensory moods of a living city, chasing after its rhythms, its folkways, its architectural details. Soul is a movie about death, about jazz, about longing and limitation. It's also a New York movie. As such, it traffics in a brusque, urbanist sentimentality that isn't immune to or afraid of cliché. The sensory riot of the city includes squalling car horns, clattering trains, bagels, slices of pizza, barber shops, subway platforms, and the perpetual motion bustle of pedestrians, strollers, yellow cabs, and more. Everything we used to complain about and miss desperately now. All of this is rendered, drawn isn't the right word. Some combination of sculpted and orchestrated is what's needed, with graceful, kinetic precision. Like other great New York movies, it invites you to identify particular intersections and storefronts to compare its imagined geography with the city of your own experience. It isn't all noise and crowds. Part of the Pixar aesthetic over the years has been to collapse the distance between animation and other kinds of cinema. And you would swear that the New York scenes and Soul were filmed in natural light. There is a beauty that is almost spiritual in the way the sun falls across a block of row houses, through the windows of a storefront, or along the floorboards of a walk-up apartment. Or maybe not almost. The apartment belongs to a pianist named Joe Gardner, voiced by Jamie Foxx, whose literal struggle to keep body and soul together drives a plot across the city and into the beyond. Now let's take a look at how Pixar's Soul animates jazz. We're going to take a look at the ways filmmakers and musicians collaborated to present an accurate view of players' artistry. Pixar's animators have a history of achieving impressive feats, making characters and textures feel more authentic in increasingly complex ways. But how would they portray jazz? With Soul, the challenge was to translate the music's emotional and improvisational qualities through a technical process with little room for improvisation. While plenty of animation over the years has gotten the spirit of jazz, Soul sits right next to the piano keys to show in detail a musician creating. And Pixar knew many eyes especially those belonging to jazz musicians, would be examining its work. The film follows Joe Gardner, a school band teacher by day, a talented but unsuccessful jazz pianist by night. He struggles to get gigs, but when he sits at the piano, he is transported. His stress fades and his passion emerges with each note. The Pixar filmmakers, known for attention to detail, in Cars, the motor sounds of each vehicle came from the same model's actual engine, knew that capturing the fundamentals of jazz performance would not be possible without the collaboration of jazz artists. We wanted to make sure that if this guy is going to be a jazz musician, he should know the clubs and the backstory, the film's director Pete Docter said in a video. He and his team visited clubs in New York to get a better understanding. We would just go up and talk to musicians and ask them, "Where did you study?" he said. "How did you get here? What other jobs do you have?" And try to really flesh out the world of those characters. They also consulted with a number of marquee musicians, including Herbie Hancock, the jazz drummer, Terry Lyne Carrington, and Questlove, who also did voice work in the movie. Pixar also brought on the keyboardist Jon Batiste, the band leader and musical director on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. He created the original compositions that Joe performs on screen. Jon Batiste recorded the music with the band in a New York studio, and Docter captured those sessions with multiple cameras. "We set up like 80 GoPros everywhere," Docter said. Then they studied the video to get a more accurate picture of how to animate the scene. Docter said that the animators exaggerated certain movements in Joe's playing for visual effect. But in terms of posture and hitting the right notes, that was crucial for us to make sure that it really felt authentic. Along with video, they were able to digitally save the notes that were being played. That digital stream could be reverse programmed into the animation in a way that worked almost like a player piano, signaling to the animators which key was being played with each note. So when you see Joe at the piano, he's playing exactly the notes you're hearing. At the recording sessions, Docter said his approach to directing Batiste was similar to the way he directs actors. He avoided giving specific line readings or input on the music, and instead tried to paint a picture so Batiste could understand the mood of the scene. I might just say, you know that sense when you're playing and the world disappears and you wake up and 3 hours have gone by? That's what we're looking for, Docter said. Batiste would make adjustments to his composition during the session to match the film's needs. It was a joy to watch him work, Docter said. It was like having a private concert. Batiste said that he felt a connection with Docter in creating these scenes. Pete is a healer and a philosopher, he said by email, and that he was glad to see the care with which black music was being treated. Docter grew up playing music. 2 sisters are professional musicians, and his parents are music educators. So that made it easier to sync up with the film's musical passions. And on his team, he said those who were animating a specific instrument often either had experience playing that instrument or a strong appreciation for it. Joe, in all his complexity, is brought to life in 3 ways. Through Jamie Foxx's vocal performance, the character's design and movement, and Batiste's compositions and performance. Those close-up shots of Joe's hands in motion reflect the pianist's spirited style of play, so much so that Batiste was taken aback when he saw those moments on screen. "My hands are central to my life," he said. "I was in tears when I saw my essence come to life in Joe. To have this as a part of my creative legacy is an honor. And it absolutely, I can't even imagine, it probably feels that way, right? So you guys, we're going to cut into a very brief break right now. And when we come back, more at the GSMC Entertainment Podcast.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to GSMC Entertainment Podcast. So we went over, how Pixar's Soul movie was able to capture the true essence of a jazz musician and really capture the authenticity of the craft, which I think they did a superb job, right? And now we are going to still continue to talk about Soul in this segment, because I believe this movie deserves 2 segments on today's episode. It is that good. I absolutely love this movie. And we're going to talk about how Soul features Pixar's first Black lead character. And here's how it happened. And it's really crazy to hear first Black anything in 2020, almost 2021, because it's it should have been happening, you feel me? But better late than never, I guess. Mindful of animation's history of racist imagery, the studio aimed to make the jazz pianist at the center of the film as specific as possible. All Pixar features arrive with technical innovations, but Soul, which came out on Christmas Day on Disney Plus, breaks important new ground. The movie centers on the studio's first Black protagonist, Joe Gardner, a jazz pianist on what might be the biggest day of his life, and the creative team includes the company's first Black co-director, Kemp Powers. In general, Black stories and talent remain underrepresented in American animation, on screen and off. You can hear Black stars in supporting roles, like Samuel L. Jackson as Frozone in the Incredibles movies, or voicing animals Chris Rock and Jada Pinkett Smith in the Madagascar series. But Soul is only the 4th American animated feature to make Black characters the leads, following Baby's Kids 1992 movie, The Princess and the Frog 2009, and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 2018. Can you believe there's only 4 American animated feature with Black lead characters? Only 4. Only 4, you guys. What in the world is that? There needs to be more. To me, Joe represents a lot of people who aren't being seen right now, said Jamie Foxx, who provides Joe's voice. Joe is in all of us, regardless of color. To be the first Black lead in a Pixar film feels like a blessing, especially during this time when we could all use some extra love and light. Knowing their work on Soul would be minutely scrutinized, the director Pete Docter, the co-screenwriter Mike Jones, and the producer Dana Murray, who are white, set out to create a character who would be believably black while avoiding the stereotypes of the past. The journey of Joe Gardner and Soul began 4 years ago when Doctor fell at loose ends after winning his second Oscar for Inside Out. Murray recalled, "Pete had this feeling. Is this it? Do I just do this again? I don't know if it was a midlife crisis as much as a midlife what am I doing moment." Doctor began wondering about the origins of human personalities and whether people were born destined to do certain things. Jones added, "In our first meeting, he told me, think about an idea set in a place beyond space and time, where souls are given their personalities." Doctor said he and Jones worked for about 2 years to develop Joe, a black middle school music teacher and musician from Queens. But something was missing. We wanted somebody who could speak authentically about this character and bring some depth to him, Doctor said. That's when Kemp Powers came on as the film's co-director. Kemp Powers' background is in live action and journalism. He adapted the coming film One Night in Miami from his own play, but he felt at home in the new medium. Animation is a very collaborative, iterative form which felt very akin to live theater, he said. He was initially hired for 12 weeks as a writer, but his contract was extended. Later, I got promoted to co-director because Pete really wrapped me into the process. Nevertheless, Kemp Powers understood the pitfalls of his role. Some people might relish the idea of saying they speak for black people, black Americans, whatever. I am not one of those people, he said, adding, I am absolutely a black man and I know my history. At the same time, I can't speak for all the black men who are from New York. I can't speak for my generation. Murray said Pixar recognized that if Joe's going to be black, we'd need a lot of help. She said Britta Wilson, the company's vice president for inclusion strategies, helped build an internal cultural trust made up of some of the studio's black employees, a group that was diverse in terms of gender, jobs, and age. We also talked to a lot of external consultants and worked with black organizations to make sure we were telling the story authentically and truthfully, Murray added. Powers said they were all aware of the specificity needed for Joe's character. Treating the black experience as a monolith makes things a lot easier. You can have one black person rubber stamp something and use that as your excuse for not having tried harder to get it right. He recalled that the individual consultants brought a range of viewpoints. We'd have 20 black people in a room. We'd ask a question about and get 20 different answers. Their debates sometimes broke along generational lines, which was interesting. Things I think are fine may seem offensive to the younger generation. Everyone had a different take, which made the job exponentially harder, but that care was needed. Further complicating their work was the fact that animation is a medium of caricature. No human is as squat and angular as Carl in Pixar's Up, yet audiences accept him as a crabby old man. For Soul, the Pixar crew strove to create characters who were recognizably black while avoiding anything that recalled the racist stereotypes in old cartoons. From Mammy Two Shoes, the black maid in the Tom and Jerry cartoons, to George Powell's stop-motion Jasper. Doctor, who has written about animation history, acknowledged there's a long and painful history of caricatured racist design tropes that were used to mock African Americans. He recalled that when he was making Up, he worried about how the design of the Asian American scout Russell might be perceived. Doctor said his fellow Pixar director Peter Son, a Korean American artist, advised him, Korean eyes are shaped differently than Caucasian eyes. Look at me and draw what you see. The truth isn't racist. Powers agreed that there was an important difference between leaning into and taking pride in those features and making fun of those features. Pixar, he said, was mindful of the sorry images from animation history. When it came to designing appealing but stylized characters, the artists took care not to make them insulting. At the same time, we didn't want them to be white characters who happened to be brown-skinned. We had to give them distinct looks, so they're not just boring, monotone characters. To create those looks, Pixar artists and technicians needed to capture the textures of black hair and the way light plays on various tones of black skin. Murray said they brought in the cinematographer Bradford Young, who worked includes Solo, a Star Wars story, to consult as well. Finding the voice that fits an animated character is as challenging as finding the best performer for a live-action role. You have a voice in your head that you can write to, Jones explained. We needed Joe to have ambition, to want to play music at the highest level, but we also needed Joe to be excited to teach what he loves, jazz, to his students, all of which Jamie provided. Although Jamie Foxx has voiced animated characters before, he still had to adjust his performance. When I got in the recording booth, I was delivering the lines with all kinds of facial expressions and gestures, Jamie Foxx said. They were like, Jamie, let's try that again, and remember, we can't see you. During the film, Joe argues and bonds with a recalcitrant soul known as 22, who refuses to enter a human body. As 22, Tina Fey found the purely vocal performance liberating, though she too has done other voiceovers before. I could let go of any worry about how I looked, even as a comedy person. You're always thinking a little bit about finding your light and standing up straight. It's so freeing to not have to do that. The relationship between Joe and 22 grows increasingly complicated, but neither actor wanted to say anything that might spoil the plot twists. Reflecting on the creation of Soul, Kemp Powers said, "When someone told me I was Pixar's first black director, I said that can't be right." Pete said, "And my hope is, this is an indicator of changes that are going to be pretty rapid. There are more animators of color and women in the business than there were 15 or 20 years ago," he noted. "It's sad it's taken this long, but I'm glad it's coming finally." Me too, Kemp. Me freaking too. Let's see. All Pixar features arrive with technical innovations, but Soul breaks important new ground. The movie centers on the studio's first black protagonist, Joe Gardner, a jazz pianist on what might be the biggest day of his life, and the creative team includes the company's first black co-director, Kemp Powers. In general, black stories and talent remain underrepresented in American animation, on screen and off. You can hear black stars in supporting roles, Samuel L. Jackson as Frozone in the Incredible movies, or voicing animals, Chris Rock and Jada Pinkett Smith in the Madagascar series. But Soul is only the fourth American animated feature to make black characters the leads. To me, Joe represents a lot of people who aren't being seen right now, said Jamie Foxx, who provides Joe's voice. Joe is in all of us, regardless of color. To be the first black lead in a Pixar film feels like a blessing, especially during this time when we could all use some extra love and light. Knowing their work on Soul would be minutely scrutinized, the director Pete Docter, the co-screenwriter Mike Jones, and the producer Dana Murray, who are white, set out to create a character who would be believably black while avoiding the stereotypes of the past. You guys, we are going to cut into a very brief break. And when we come back, more at the GSMC Entertainment Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hey guys, and welcome back to GSMC Entertainment Podcast. And since we've been talking about movies this entire time, I'm thinking, why not? Let's continue the same theme. But this time, besides Soul, we are going to discuss the 10 best films of 2020. It certainly wasn't a typical year for, well, anything, including movies. As Hollywood packed up shop and pushed a lot of their projects to 2021 or streaming services, questions arose about how to critically assess such an unusual time for cinema. Some groups, like the Academy, pushed their awards back to make a longer window for inclusion, while some writers lamented the lack of quality overall. They just weren't looking hard enough. In the end, it was a very solid year for the form, and the lack of blockbusters only allowed for more room to assess the movies that might have otherwise gone under the radar. Let's just say that it was not hard to come up with 20 films that we feel represented the quality of 2020. And great movies didn't even make the cut. Every single one of the 20 films below will stand the test of time, remaining important works of art even after the din of those horrible years behind us. Art endures. About the rankings. We asked our regular film critics and editors to submit top 10 lists, ranked or unranked, and then consolidated them with the point system resulting in the lists below, with a new entry for each awarded film, to read each critic's top 10 individual list. So the runner-ups: Buckaroo, Bloody Nose, Empty Pockets, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, On the Rocks, Sound of Metal, Time, The Vast of Night, Vatalina Varela, The Wolf House, and Wolfwalkers. Sitting at number 10, The Assistant. Kitty Green's remarkable The Assistant is about Me Too and Harvey Weinstein, without explicitly being about those things. Instead, this quiet day-in-the-life drama breaks down the many ways employees are forced to tolerate bad behavior. In the film, Jane, Julia Gardner, is a hardworking every woman who treks into the office each morning from Queens when it's still dark out. But today, something is off. She finds an earring in her boss's office. A woman she's never seen before stops by to pick it up. A young woman from Idaho flies in for a job, likes hers, and the company puts her up at a fancy hotel. When her boss disappears, all her co-workers seem to know where he's gone. When Jane finally works up the courage to report him to a HR representative, a chilling Matthew McFadden, he weighs off her concerns and warns that her report could end her career. As Jane tearfully gets up to leave, he tells her not to worry. You're not his type. The assistant psychologically explores all the little ways someone trying to do the right thing meets resistance. Her boss yells at her and humiliates her to write him an apology for every so-called mistake, pummeling her will into self-preservation. Others in the office know what's happening, but more or less led by example to look the other way. Jane's supposed to be relieved that she's not on the receiving end of sexual harassment, but what about the other women, or the next executive she works for? Julia Green's movie, which she also wrote and directed, works not just within the setting of a production company, but to almost any toxic workplace that encourages its employees to ignore abuse and give them no tools to stop it. Sitting at number 9 is The Nest. There are scenes in Sean Durkin's marital drama, The Nest, that are so raw and real, so specific and vivid, you may feel the need to watch them through splayed fingers. As writer and director, he creates the sensation that you've wandered into an intimate space where you don't belong, watching as a husband and wife tear each other apart with deep-seated resentment and hyper-verbal jabs. It's uncomfortable, but you can't look away, because the dialogue is so riveting and the performances from Jude Law and Carrie Coon are so exquisite. 9 years after his debut film, Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene, Durkin once again explores themes of seeking and striving, of reinventing yourself into an idealized persona with dangerous consequences. The cult that Law's Rory O'Hara has joined is capitalism, but given that it's the conspicuous consumption era of Reagan and Thatcher, his earnings are inevitable. Durkin never spells out that notion, though. Rather, it's part of the rich atmosphere he creates as Rory, Coons, Allison, and their 2 kids relocate from upstate New York to England in pursuit of elusive riches. Rory already lives like he's made it big, but he's hustling and smoozing, relying on his looks and charm to get him in the door at prestigious investment firms, and it's clear that the tightrope he's walking will snap beneath his feet at any moment. While he insists on moving his family into a sprawling manor they can't afford, a building sense of claustrophobia is inescapable. Within this slow burn, Law and Coon give career best performances. This is the role Law has been working toward his whole life, playing on both his golden boy beauty and sinister charisma. And Coon is just a knockout as Law's fed-up wife. She has a chameleon-like quality as an actress, but no matter the role, she exudes a bracing directness. She always gives you an authentic truth, and when she finally snaps, she's ferocious. The Nest evokes its 1980s setting in inspired ways, from unexpected wardrobe and production design choices to a varied soundtrack of hits ranging from The Cure to Bronski Beat to Al Jarreau. But while the period details are specific, the story of desire and deceit is timeless. Sitting at number 8. Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. The title is the list of possible answers to a series of sensitive questions a social worker asks a pregnant teenager seeking an abortion. Real-life social worker Kelly Chapman, who assisted writer-director Elisa Hittman with her research for the film, gently asks Autumn, newcomer Sydney Flanagan, about abuse and consent, in case a safety plan is necessary following the procedure. As she tries to select the right option to answer each question, we see a dozen memories and emotions flicker across her face. It is one of the year's most unforgettable scenes. We never find out who's responsible for Autumn's pregnancy or what the circumstances were, but her answer to questions about whether she consented to sexual contact is not always. Autumn and her cousin Skylar, Talia Ryder, take a bus from Pennsylvania to New York because that is the only way Autumn can get an abortion without her mother and stepfather finding out. In an interview, Hitman told me she wanted to reclaim the narrative on reproductive rights with the woman's perspective. She tells the story with great tenderness, more protective of the two girls than the other characters are. Hitman's intimate documentary tone illuminates the girls' vulnerability, their determination, and their resilience. Sitting at number 7, Beanpole. Kantemir Balagov's period piece about two Russian women pushing through the debris of World War II and their related trauma was about as depressing as storytelling got in 2020. Its first major tragedy alone, involving the death of a child, may be too much for some to bear. And it's only the beginning of a story that feels like it's constantly folding in on itself, using the two arc of two best friends to capture how an entire country heals from the wounds of war, all while it feels like they're sinking into quicksand. It is a masterful film that works on multiple levels. A deeply empathetic character studied, anchored by two breathtaking performances, and also a study in Russian history made with some of the most impressive craft of the year. The stunningly naturalistic Victoria Miroshnichenko and Vasilisa Pereligina, both newcomers who should have long careers, play Aya and Masha, two very different survivors. Aya has deep trauma, both physical and mental, that leads to events in which she appears to simply freeze up, lost in horrible memory. Masha's wounds are revealed through the story, but this former Russian soldier will do whatever it takes to get what she wants. Taking place largely at a hospital at which the two women work, Beanpole is about two women trying to rebuild something from the wreckage of Leningrad and their lives. It further proved that cinema is uniting force, finding the relatable emotion and humanity across culture and time. It's unforgettable. Sitting at number 6 is Minari. There aren't a million different stories to be told. Most stories, even personal ones, contain familiar elements or come from similar sources. But there are different lenses through which to view the familiar. Lenses which expand and transform our shared collective memory and or experience. For example, the story of NASA, told in countless films and documentaries, was incomplete until the hidden figures of African American mathematicians and engineers were revealed. And so the lens got wider. The story didn't lessen in relevance, but expands because more people are included in it. Lee Isaac Chung's Minari, loosely based on his own childhood in Arkansas, is this kind of film. Minari is a familiar immigrant story and a familiar American story, filled with a dream of owning land, working the land, being your own boss. Jacob, played by Stephen Yeun, and Monica, played by Yeri Han, Korean immigrants, make the bold choice to leave their jobs as chicken sexers in California to move to Arkansas with their 2 small children, chasing Jacob's dream to start a small farm. Jacob revels in the dirt, the sweat, the vision of crops to cut. Monica hates all of it, and the children look on, scared as their parents' marriage disintegrates. Monica's mother staying with them adds tension in the small home. Grandma is a live wire, and Ya Jong-yoon's superb performance is key to Minari's impact. as well as the reason behind its title. Manera captures the rhythms of farm life while also devoting its attention into the specifics of the family dynamic. Jacob and Monica's fractured marriage, Grandma's relationship with 6-year-old David, and the family's relationship to the rural town where they now live. Chung sets things up meticulously so the payoffs, when they come, are not just truthful, but carry huge weight and emotion. This is old-fashioned filmmaking in the very best and truest sense of the word. In speaking of Marilyn Monroe, photographer Henry Cartier-Bresson observed, "She's American and it's very clear that she is. She's very good that way. One has to be very local to be universal." This is what Chung accomplishes. Minari depicts a very specific experience, a very local experience, and by doing so has created a film shimmering with universal truths about childhood, family, mortality, belonging, dreams, and hope. So you guys, we are going to cut into a very brief break, and when we come back, more at the GSMC Entertainment Podcast.
Golden State Media Concepts bring you Book Review Podcast, a haven for bookworms of all ages and the widest genres, from mystery to memoirs, romance to comedy, fantasy to sci-fi. If you love to read, this is a podcast for you. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to GSMC Entertainment Podcast. We are now entering the final segment of today's show, and we are going to wrap it up with listing the final 5 top 10 movies of 2020. So we've gone through and talked about Minari, Beanpole, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, The Nest, and The Assistant. Sitting at number 5, we have The Five Bloods. In its soul, Spike Lee's The Five Bloods is about 4 Black American soldiers returning to Vietnam to reclaim the bones and wisdom of the man who guided them through the war. Stormin' Norman, played with holy majesty and flashbacks by the late Chadwick Boseman, is the dominating voice of such wisdom in Lee's gorgeously in-your-face history lesson about how America was never great. And it could never be great if it treats people as it does and has. During his powerful monologues, Norman reminds his fellow Bloods about how America was built on the sacrifice of black bodies, like that of Crispus Attucks, the first man killed in the American Revolutionary War. And when the Five Bloods learn about Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, Norman is the one to steer them away from retaliation. "We control our rage," he assures them. "They can't use our rage against us." The past is present in the world of The Five Bloods, Lee's Vietnam War movie that honors the PTSD the war has inflicted on the natives and the soldiers who toured through. It is a lively, multifaceted, and heavily emotional adventure, starting with 4 reunited veteran friends boogering inside a club named Apocalypse Now. Our complicated heroes, played by DeRoy Lindo, Clark Peters, Norm Lewis, and Isaiah Whitlock Jr., experience the country through the pain of the Vietnamese people, and The Five Bloods distinctly removes jingoism from its dialogue on American history. Parallel to the movie's compassion for how the American war never truly ended in Vietnam, it's also the context that America used Black lives for war while not supporting them at home. The Bloods were part of a generation sent to die for a country that then killed the leaders of their freedom. The script was co-written by Lee and Kevin Wilmot, who rewrote a script by Paul DeMoe and Danny Bilson to focus on Black soldiers. Along with Norman's remains, these veterans are also searching for the gold they buried back during the war, which Normans always said should go back toward Black liberation. Everyone wants their share, but some Americans want to be, as Paul puts it, the mother trucker. Paul believed in Norman like a religion, according to his fellow Bloods, but has become angry at the world and estranged from his son David, who joins the four Bloods on their treasure hunt. Paul embodies a type of MAGA madness, wearing a red Make America Great Again cap through the movie as a provocative statement and as a distracting from a sense of powerlessness. The story's twisting events send a sweat-drenched Paul deeper into the jungle and into the reasons behind his anger. Expressed by Lindo and fourth wall breaking, close-up monologues of frightening anguish and harrowing loneliness. The Five Bloods will always have a special significance being released in the summer, where Black Lives Matter received its biggest nationwide coverage yet, inspired in part by the murder of George Floyd and others at the dirty hands of oppressive discriminatory policing. The coda of Lee's film features the many faces of a Black Lives Matter group and shows the power in their numbers. Some speculated the footage was added to be timely, but Lee confirmed it was the first scene they shot, as if it was his own entry into the Five Bloods. Lee never forgets history, but he still has an invigorating, inspiring belief in what America could be. Sitting at number 4, First Cow. First Cow opens in the world of today, and a discovery both unsettling and of some archaeological sociological interest. The narrative is then borne back into the past, and eventually it dawns upon the viewer that the discovery is also a giant spoiler and wishes it weren't. This kind of narrative sleight of hand is not customary for Kelly Reichardt, who directed First Cow from a script she wrote with Jonathan Raymond, adapting his novel, The Half-Life. But it serves well her vision of America as a land of both discovery and dread. In 1820s Oregon, the end of the line for many frontiersmen, a Jewish cook and a Chinese man, exquisitely enacted by John Magaro and Ariane Lee, renegotiate their respective statuses as outcasts by teaming up and going into a kind of business together, concocting fried dough treats that tickle the taste buds of hungry trappers. The accidental entrepreneurs optimistically aspire to move south to San Francisco and open a storefront business. In the meantime, they find sustenance in each other's company and in refining their recipes. The one hitch is their source of milk, which doesn't belong to them. First Cow is leisurely paced, letting you get to know and often to laugh with its central characters. If the opening minutes of the movie remind us that, as the blues song says, death don't have no mercy, the end reminds us that history doesn't either. But what it's in between shows us what trust, friendship, quick-wittedness, love, and a little stolen milk can do to provide comfort amidst the harshness. Sitting at number 3, David Byrne's American Utopia. American Utopia shows what happens when two pop culture giants at the tops of their respective games finally collaborate, bringing a lifetime of experience to bear and treating their shared love of life performance as a common language. The star, composer, and originator of American Utopia is David Byrne, who now holds the distinction of appearing in two of the greatest concert films ever made. the other being Jonathan Demme's 1984 Stop Making Sense. The director is Spike Lee, whose output as a fiction filmmaker has been so formally innovative and politically engaged that people tend to forget that he's every bit as assured when adapting stage productions. Generously mixing new songs, beloved back catalog titles, and covers, Vernon Lee's movie is a celebration of community and personal connection, mirroring the structure of Stop Making Sense, which likewise starts with Byrne performing solo, then adds instrumentalists and backup singers until the stage is filled, while establishing its own very Spike Lee aesthetic. Its themes and generous spirit inadvertently made it the perfect antidote to or virtual escape from the intense feelings of isolation that gripped people all over the world throughout the first year of the COVID pandemic. But the sheer beauty of the music, choreography, and images give American Utopia a resonance that will outlast the historical moment that framed it. Shooting with multiple cameras and working closely with cinematographer Ellen Kuras and the show's original choreographer Annie B. Parson, Lee makes sure that a simple, powerful, standalone, gorgeous image appears after every new cut. Whether it's close-up of a guitar being strummed, an overhead shot of performers moving in formation or playing possum on the stage floor, or a close-up of Byrne's wondering face, this is the purest sort of filmmaking and the purest kind of art. Sitting at number 2, Nomad Land. Chloe Zhao's Nomad Land unfolds as a deliberately paced series of observations. As the camera drinks in the gorgeous, sometimes ostentatious views of the outdoors, Zhao allows us to nonchalantly visit the characters who inhabit this small corner of the universe. We sit with them, hear their dreams and concerns, feel their joys and frustrations, and learn how they deal with the day-to-day drudgeries of their on-the-road lifestyle. These are presented matter-of-factly, without any prettying up or overly dramatic rendering of events. Our central character is Fern, a widow whose husband and hometown of Empire, Nevada were both taken away from her within 6 months. Empire literally disappeared after the gypsum plant closed and the residents left for greener pastures. For Fern, those pastures involve living outside in her van, driving from place to place while doing seasonal work to make ends meet. She interacts with the temporary communities of fellow employees that sprout up when places like Amazon are hiring. The people Fern meets are played by several non-actors, folks who are really living the life Nomadland explores. They bring a beautiful, lived-in, and at times mythic quality to the film. Their discussions about hoping to live long enough to fulfill their individual destinies leave a haunting residue long after the credits roll. These people stay with you, like friends who have moved on yet linger in our memories. Zhao wisely refuses to pass judgment or even explain her character's motivations, instead forcing us to process them through our own personal filters. At the center of this superb movie is McDormand, giving one of the best performances of her career. She sinks into the role, practically becoming as new a discovery as the non-actors to whom she charitably cedes the spotlight. Even her moments with David Stratton, the only other familiar face in the cast, have a quiet, rugged, lived-in quality that is miles removed from their celebrity status. We expect them to make us feel for their characters. The bigger surprise is how attached we become to everyone else. Nomadland engenders the empathy our beloved founder, Roger Ebert, believed movies can produce in a viewer. It is filled with people, stories, and performances that solicit and demand our understanding, opening our hearts as the best empathy machines do. And sitting at number 1 is Small Axe Lovers Rock. And you guys, that's going to wrap up today's episode here at the GSMC Entertainment Podcast. It is the final segment of 2020. Next time I see y'all, we are going to be in a new year, 2021. If you guys enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, all of that stuff, because that tremendously helps the show. And I'll catch you guys here for the next one.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Entertainment Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.